Where are you, witch? Ah! I'll find you!
The baby monitor crackled to life at 11:47 p.m., but it wasn't Riley crying. I sat up in my narrow bed above the garage, listening to the rhythmic creaking of bed springs from the main house below, Lena's bedroom. Our bedroom until 3 months ago when she decided I needed space to figure things out. The sounds weren't subtle, breathless moans. A man's voice I didn't recognize, grunting with satisfaction. My wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, was screwing someone in the bed we'd shared for 7 years, while our 4-year-old daughter slept down the hall. I grabbed the monitor's receiver, my hands shaking with rage I hadn't felt since Kandahar. The green LED pulsed with each thrust, each gasp, each whispered obscenity that drifted through the crackling speaker. "God, yes," Lena panted. "David never made me feel like this." The male voice chuckled. "Poor fool probably thinks you're grieving the marriage." I set the monitor down carefully, my army training kicking in. Assess, plan, execute. No emotional decisions, not yet. From my nightstand drawer, I pulled out the upgraded surveillance equipment I'd installed last week. Lena thought I was just playing with electronics like always. She had no idea I'd spent 2 tours learning how to gather intelligence on targets who wanted me dead. The laptop screen flickered to life, showing 4 camera feeds from inside the house: kitchen, living room, hallway. And the master bedroom, where my wife was riding a man I'd never seen before like her life depended on it. He was maybe 40, dark hair, expensive watch. Definitely not a random hookup. This had the look of something established, comfortable. They moved together like they'd done this before. Many times before. I screenshot his face, then closed the laptop. Tomorrow I'd run facial recognition through my old contacts at Fort Belvoir. Tonight, I needed to think. The affair itself didn't surprise me. Lena had been distant for months, working late, taking business trips that seemed to accomplish nothing. But hearing her mock me to her lover while our daughter slept 20 feet away, that crossed a line I didn't know existed. The baby monitor fell silent. I heard footsteps, then the front door opening and closing, car engine starting, gravel crunching as he drove away. I waited 15 minutes, then climbed down from the garage apartment and slipped inside through the kitchen door. The house smelled like Zex and expensive cologne. Lena's wine glass sat on the counter, lipstick stain on the rim. 2 glasses. In the living room, I found what I was looking for, a business card that had fallen behind the couch cushions. Reed Mathers, Financial Consulting. Silver embossed letters on cream cardstock. I memorized the details, then put it back exactly where I'd found it. Upstairs, I checked on Riley. She was sleeping peacefully, clutching her stuffed elephant. Her nightlight cast gentle shadows on walls covered with drawings we'd made together, stick figures of Daddy, Mommy, and Riley holding hands under a yellow sun. Those drawings felt like artifacts from another life now. Back in the garage, I opened my laptop again and searched for Reed Mathers online. LinkedIn showed a successful finance consultant with his own firm in Tyson's Corner. Divorced, no kids. The kind of smooth operator who wore $1,000 suits and drove a Porsche. The kind of man Lena had always said she found interesting. I was still staring at his photo when my phone buzzed with a text from Lena. "Hope I didn't wake you. Couldn't sleep, watched a movie downstairs." I typed back, "No problem. See you tomorrow for Riley's pickup. Of course. Love you. Love you." I stared at those words until they stopped meaning anything. Reed Mathers owned a firm called Pinnacle Financial, located in a glass tower that screamed success. His client list included several Fortune 500 companies, and, according to his website, he specialized in complex asset restructuring during life transitions. Like divorces. I spent the next morning upgrading my surveillance network. Military-grade directional microphones, motion-activated cameras, GPS trackers small enough to hide in a key fob. The equipment cost me $3,000, but I'd learned in Middle East that good intelligence was worth any price. Lena was at work, so I had free access to the house. I planted bugs in her car, her purse, her office at home. Each device was virtually undetectable, broadcasting to a secure server I'd set up in the garage. By noon, I was listening to her every conversation. The first breakthrough came at 2:15 p.m. Lena was on her cell phone, pacing around her home office like she always did when she was scheming. "Reed, we need to move faster," she said. "David's too calm about all this. It's making me nervous." "Relax." Reed's voice was smooth, confident. "The guy's a pushover. You said so yourself." That's what worries me. He should be fighting for custody, demanding answers. Instead, he just accepts everything. Maybe he knows he can't win. You got the better lawyer, the better income, and when we're ready to make our move about his mental state, don't talk about that on the phone. Right, sorry. Look, I'll be over tonight after he picks up the kid. We'll discuss strategy. Strategy. I smiled grimly as I recorded every word. That evening, I collected Riley for my court-mandated overnight visit. She hugged me tight at the front door, her small arms wrapping around my neck like she never wanted to let go. Daddy, why don't you live with us anymore? The question hit me like shrapnel. It's complicated, sweetheart. But I'll always be your dad, okay? That never changes. Lena appeared behind her, wearing a black dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. Have her back by 6 tomorrow. Of course. She kissed Riley goodbye, then looked at me with what she probably thought was sympathy. David, I know this is hard, but we're doing the right thing. For everyone. I'm sure we are. Something in my tone made her pause, but I was already walking away with Riley in my arms. We spent the evening at Chuck E. Cheese, then watched Disney movies until she fell asleep on my couch. I carried her to the small bedroom I'd set up, tucking her under blankets covered with cartoon princesses. While she slept, I monitored the feeds from the main house. Reed arrived at 9:30 p.m., carrying a bottle of wine and a folder full of documents. They settled in the living room, and I increased the gain on my microphones to catch every word. The psychiatric evaluation is the key, Reed was saying. We establish a pattern of instability, maybe some paranoia. Military PTSD is perfect, sympathetic but scary. David doesn't have PTSD. He doesn't need to have it, he just needs to appear to have it. A few strategically witnessed incidents, some concerned calls to your lawyer. And then what? Emergency custody hearing. We present evidence of erratic behavior, possibly dangerous to the child. You get full custody and his 49% of the company. I nearly dropped my headphones. My company. The electronics consulting firm I'd built from nothing after leaving the Army. Lena owned 49% through our marriage, but I'd never imagined she wanted to steal the rest. What about David himself? Lena asked. What about him? Once he's deemed unfit, he'll be lucky to get supervised visits. And his share of the company goes into court-ordered management. Guess who I'd recommend as the trustee? They laughed together, the sound cold and calculating. You've thought of everything, Lena said, moving closer to him on the couch. That's why you're paying me. Well, that and other services. The camera showed them kissing, hands roaming over expensive clothes. I watched my wife betray me in real time, planning to destroy my life while using my own surveillance equipment to do it. But I didn't feel rage anymore. I felt something colder, more focused. I felt ready. Nina Evans had always hated her sister. 2 years younger than Lena, Nina had spent her entire life watching their parents fawn over the successful daughter while she struggled through a bitter divorce and single motherhood. When I called her the next morning, she answered on the first ring. David, is everything okay? I need to see you. Today. It's about Lena. A pause. What did she do now? I'd rather explain in person. Can you meet me for coffee? I'll be there in an hour. Nina arrived at the Starbucks near my office looking exactly like Lena, but harder around the edges. Same dark hair, same green eyes, but where Lena had polished perfection, Nina wore her bitterness like armor. You look terrible, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. Thanks. I need your help with something. If it involves screwing over my sister, I'm listening. I showed her the photos from the surveillance cameras, Reed entering the house, the two of them in bed. The documents spread across the coffee table during their strategy session. Nina's face darkened as she absorbed the implications. That manipulative witch. She's actually trying to steal your company, among other things. What do you need me to do? I need someone they trust. Someone who can get close enough to gather evidence without raising suspicions. Someone like the concerned sister-in-law who just wants to help save the marriage? Exactly. Nina leaned back, a smile spreading across her face. It was the same smile Lena wore when she was planning something cruel, but directed at the right target for once. I've been waiting my whole life for this conversation, she said. What's the plan? I outlined my strategy. Nina would approach Lena with offers to help, to mediate, to understand David's perspective. She'd wear a wire, gather recordings, document everything they planned to do to me. You know she'll see right through it, Nina warned. Oh, Lena's not stupid. She doesn't have to believe you care about me. She just has to believe you care about Riley, and about getting your hands on some of that company money if the divorce goes badly for me. Nina's laugh was bitter. Oh, she'll believe that. Money's the only thing Lena thinks anyone cares about. That afternoon, Nina called Lena and arranged a sisterly lunch for the following day. While they were meeting, I used my access to the house to plant additional surveillance equipment and clone Lena's laptop hard drive. What I found in her files confirmed my worst fears. Email chains with Reed going back 8 months. Detailed financial projections showing how they'd split my company assets. Research into commitment procedures for veterans with PTSD. Even a draft statement for the custody hearing, describing me as increasingly paranoid and potentially violent. The most damning file was titled DavidIncidents.docs, a fabricated timeline of disturbing behavior I'd supposedly exhibited over the past year. Talking to myself, angry outbursts, irrational suspicions about being watched. None of it had happened, but it was convincing enough to fool a family court judge who didn't know me personally. At the bottom of the document was a note. Need to provoke 2, 3 more incidents before filing. Reed suggests sedating. I printed everything, then erased any trace of my access to her system. When Nina returned from lunch, she was grinning like a shark. Your wife is even worse than I thought, she said. She spent an hour complaining about how you're losing it and might be dangerous to Riley. Wanted to know if I'd noticed any strange behavior. What did you tell her? That you seemed stressed but devoted to Riley. That I was worried about both of you. Nina's expression hardened. Then she asked if I thought you might be capable of violence. And I told her what she wanted to hear, that military guys sometimes snap, that I'd keep an eye on you and let her know if I saw anything concerning. Perfect. Now, we wait for them to make their move. Nina studied me for a long moment. David, what exactly are you planning here? Because if you're thinking about doing something stupid, I'm not going to hurt anyone, I said. But I'm not going to let them destroy my life either. Sometimes the best defense is a good offense. My sister's not going to just roll over and take whatever you're planning. I'm counting on that. The sedating attempt came 3 days later, exactly as I'd predicted. Lena invited me to dinner to discuss Riley's needs during the divorce proceedings. The invitation came via text, casual and concerned, the perfect setup for what she and Reed had planned. I arrived at 7 p.m. sharp, carrying flowers and wearing a hidden camera the size of a button. Lena had prepared my favorite meal, salmon with rice, asparagus, and a bottle of the Pinot Grigio we'd shared on our honeymoon. This is nice, I said, settling into my usual chair at the kitchen table. Feels almost normal. That's what I was hoping for. Lena poured wine into 2 glasses, handling mine with exaggerated care. I know things have been tense, but we need to put Riley first. I accepted the glass, noting how she watched my every movement. The wine looked normal, smelled normal, but I'd learned to trust my instincts in places where mistakes meant end. To Riley, I said, raising the glass, to doing what's right for our daughter. We clinked glasses. I brought mine to my lips, pretending to drink while actually letting the wine touch only the rim. When Lena looked away to serve dinner, I switched our glasses. The conversation was pleasant, almost nostalgic. Lena reminisced about our early years, our courtship, the day Riley was born. She seemed genuinely emotional, and for a moment I wondered if I'd misjudged her intentions. Then, she started pushing the wine. You're not drinking, she observed. Just savoring it. This is good stuff. Have some more. You look stressed. The booze might help you relax. I'm fine, really. David, when's the last time you had a good night's sleep? You've lost weight. You look... She paused as if searching for the right words. You look like you're struggling. Maybe I am struggling. Finding out your wife wants a divorce tends to mess with your head. I know, and I feel terrible about that. But maybe this is an opportunity. A chance for both of us to figure out what we really want. She leaned forward, touching my hand. Drink with me, like old times. I picked up the glass, the one that had originally been hers, and took a long swallow. You're right. To new beginnings. Relief flickered across her face. We finished dinner while she kept encouraging me to drink more. By the end of the meal, I'd consumed most of the bottle while she'd barely touched her glass. I should probably head back, I said, standing carefully. Don't want to drive if I'm too buzzed. Are you okay to walk? The garage is pretty far. I'll be fine. Thanks for dinner, Lena. This was nice. She walked me to the door, watching closely as I made my way across the yard. I stumbled once, deliberately, and heard her sharp intake of breath behind me. Back in the garage, I waited 30 minutes, then called Nina. It's done, I said. She sedated the wine just like we expected. Are you okay? I switched the glasses. She drank whatever she meant to give me. I poured my glass into a sample bottle for testing. Jesus, David. What if it was something dangerous? Then we'll have even better evidence for court. The next morning, Lena texted me. How are you feeling? You seemed a little off last night. I responded. Hungover, haven't had that much wine in ages. Sorry if I was weird. You weren't weird, just different. Are you sure you're okay? The concern in her message was almost convincing. If I hadn't known she was fishing for signs that her pills had worked, I might have believed she actually cared. I took the wine sample to a private lab Nina had found, one that specialized in toxicology testing for legal cases. The results came back 2 days later: lorazepam and zolpidem, Ativan and Ambien, in doses high enough to cause serious disorientation and memory loss. If I'd actually consumed that wine, I would have been in no condition to drive home. More likely, I would have passed out at the dinner table, giving Lena the perfect opportunity to call 911 and report an episode. The medical records would have shown pills in my system. Her lawyer would have painted it as evidence of substance misuse or psychological breakdown. My word against hers, with chemical proof that I was unstable. Instead, I had chemical proof that she was trying to frame me. I sealed the lab report in an envelope and placed it in my safe, along with copies of all the surveillance footage and the documents from her computer. My evidence file was growing thicker by the day, but I wasn't ready to use it yet. Not until I had everything I needed to destroy both of them completely. Reed made his first mistake the following Tuesday. I was leaving the grocery store when he approached me in the parking lot, trying to look casual but radiating aggression like heat from a fire. He wore his usual expensive suit, but his face was flushed with anger. David Cross? I turned slowly, recognizing him from the surveillance footage. Yes? I'm Reed Mathers. I work with your wife. Nice to meet you. He stepped closer, invading my personal space in a way that made my combat training kick in. I stayed relaxed, hands visible, posture non-threatening. But I was ready. I know what you're doing, he said. I'm buying groceries. Don't play stupid. The surveillance, the paranoid behavior. Lena's told me everything. I blinked, looking confused. I'm sorry, I don't understand. You're watching her, following her. It's maltreatment, and it needs to stop. I'm not following anyone. Are you feeling okay? His face darkened. Listen, you military a-hole, your marriage is over. Accept it and move on, or things are going to get ugly. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you, stay away from Lena. Stop with the stalker behavior. Focus on your own sad little life. I glanced around the parking lot, noting the security cameras mounted on light poles. Perfect positioning to capture our entire conversation. I think there's been a misunderstanding, I said calmly. I'm not stalking anyone. I'm just trying to co-parent my daughter and get through this divorce like a civilized adult. Bullshit. You're obsessed with her. It's pathetic. Who are you exactly? Lena mentioned she was working with a consultant, but I'm more than a consultant. Reed's voice rose, attracting attention from other shoppers. I'm the man who's going to help her get away from your crazy Okay, you seem upset. Maybe we should... He shoved me, hard enough to make me stumble backward into a parked car. The impact triggered the alarm, sending piercing wails echoing across the parking lot. Stay the hell away from her. I straightened, raising my hands peacefully. Look, I don't want any trouble. Then stay out of her life. He swung at me then, a wild haymaker that would have broken my jaw if I hadn't spent 2 years learning hand-to-hand combat from Army Rangers. I sidestepped the punch, grabbed his wrist, and used his momentum to spin him face first into the car door. Reed went down hard, splitting his lip on the metal door handle. Crimson red splattered on the white paint as he crumpled to the asphalt. By then, people were running toward us, store security, customers with cell phones, a off-duty cop who'd been shopping with his family. I stood over Reed with my hands raised, making sure everyone could see I wasn't attacking a man on the ground. "He swung at me," I said loudly. "I was just defending myself." Reed struggled to his feet, his expensive suit torn and bloodied. "You son of a witch!" "Sir, I need you to calm down," the off-duty cop said, placing himself between us. What happened here? This psycho attacked me. I remained calm, letting Reed's rage speak for itself. "Officer, this man approached me and started making threats. I tried to de-escalate, but he pushed me and then threw a punch. I defended myself minimally and stopped as soon as he was down. That's not what happened. Sir, you're bleeding and agitated. Do you need medical attention?" The security footage would back up my version of events. Multiple witnesses had seen Reed initiate physical contact. By the time the actual police arrived, it was clear who the aggressor had been. Reed refused medical treatment and declined to press charges, probably because his lawyer had warned him about attack and battery charges of his own. But the damage was done. I had his full name, his employer information, and video evidence of him publicly threatening me over my relationship with Lena. Best of all, I had him on record claiming to be more than a consultant in Lena's life. As I drove home, my phone rang. Lena's number. "David, what the hell happened? Reed called me from the hospital. Hospital. He refused treatment when I saw him. He changed his mind." "Said you attacked him in a parking lot?" "Is that what he said?" "He said you've been following him, that you knew where he worked, where he lived. That you're becoming dangerous." I let the silence stretch out, then said quietly, "Lena, I've never seen that man before in my life. I don't know who he is or why he'd lie about me attacking him, but I have security footage that shows him threatening me and throwing the first punch. That's not..." He wouldn't. Maybe you should ask yourself why a business consultant would get so emotionally involved in your personal life that he'd confront your husband in a parking lot. Another silence. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. "I'll talk to him. You do that. And Lena, next time your friend wants to have a conversation with me, maybe suggest he use words instead of his fists." I hung up before she could respond, then sat in my driveway grinning like a wolf. Strike one. Lena filed for emergency custody 2 weeks later. The motion claimed I was exhibiting increasingly erratic and potentially dangerous behavior, citing the unprovoked attack on Reed Mathers as evidence. Her lawyer had crafted a compelling narrative: combat veterans struggling with PTSD, paranoid episodes, violent outbursts against innocent civilians. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have been convinced myself. The hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. I arrived early, wearing my best suit and carrying a briefcase full of evidence that would destroy both of them. My lawyer, Janet Reese, was a former military attorney who understood exactly what we were dealing with. "You sure about this strategy?" she asked as we waited outside the courtroom. "Going on offense is risky. If the judge doesn't buy it, the judge will buy it because it's true, and I have proof." "Your evidence better be rock solid. Lena's lawyer is good. My evidence is better than good." "It's devastating." Judge Patricia Hammond called court to order at 9 a.m. sharp. She was in her 50s, with steel gray hair and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen every family court horror story imaginable. Lena's lawyer, Michael Torres, presented his case with theatrical precision. He painted me as a man coming apart at the seams, dangerous to my own daughter, held together only by the military discipline that was itself becoming a liability in civilian life. "Your Honor," Torres said, "Mr. Cross's behavior has escalated dramatically over the past month. The attack on Mr. Mathers was captured on security cameras, showing a trained butcher using military combat techniques against an unarmed civilian. He showed the footage, edited to start just as Reed pushed me and ending with Reed on the ground. Without context, it looked damning. Mrs. Cross fears for her daughter's safety," Torres continued. "She's documented instances of paranoid behavior, substance misuse, and increasingly erratic decision-making. We're not asking the court to terminate Mr. Cross's parental rights, merely to protect Riley until he can get the help he clearly needs." When it was my turn, Janet stood and smiled politely at the judge. "Your Honor, Mr. Torres has presented a compelling fiction. Unfortunately for his client, fiction doesn't hold up well against facts." She activated the courtroom's video system and loaded the complete parking lot footage, starting from Reed's initial approach. The judge watched in silence as Reed threatened me, initiated physical contact, and threw the first punch. As you can see, Your Honor, Mr. Cross was the sufferer of attack, not the perpetrator. He defended himself minimally and ceased all aggressive action the moment Mr. Mathers was neutralized. This is textbook de-escalation training in action. Torres objected, but the judge waved him off. She was studying the screen intently, watching Reed's aggressive approach and my calm responses. Furthermore, Janet continued, we have evidence that Mr. Mathers is not merely a business associate of Mrs. Cross, but her romantic partner, and that both of them have engaged in a conspiracy to defame Mr. Cross's character and steal his business assets. She presented the surveillance footage of Reed entering and leaving Lena's house, the audio recordings of their planning sessions, and the lab report showing Lena had sedated wine she'd served me. The courtroom fell silent as the judge absorbed the implications. Lena sat frozen at the plaintiff's table, her face pale as death. Torres was frantically shuffling through papers, looking for some way to object to evidence he hadn't expected. Your Honor, Janet said, Mrs. Cross and Mr. Mathers have engaged in infidelity, conspiracy, and attempted sedating in pursuit of their goal to steal Mr. Cross's business and deny him access to his daughter. Mr. Cross is not the unstable party in this equation. Judge Hammond looked at Lena with undisguised disgust. Mrs. Cross, do you care to explain these recordings? Lena stood on shaking legs. Your Honor, those recordings are taken out of context. David has been surveilling me illegally. Answer the question. Did you pill your husband's wine? It wasn't. He seemed so stressed, You thought you'd sedate him without his knowledge? Using prescription medications that could have eliminated him in combination with booze? Torres tried to object, but Judge Hammond cut him off with a look that could have frozen hellfire. Mrs. Cross, your motion for emergency custody is denied. Furthermore, I'm ordering a full psychiatric evaluation for you, not Mr. Cross. I'm also referring this case to the district attorney for possible criminal charges related to sedating and conspiracy. Lena collapsed back into her chair, tears streaming down her face. In the gallery behind her, I spotted Reed, trying to slip out of the courtroom unnoticed. Mr. Mathers, Judge Hammond called out, please remain seated. I have questions for you as well. The next hour was the most satisfying of my adult life. Under oath, Reed was forced to admit to the affair, the conspiracy, and his role in attacking me in the parking lot. His smooth confidence crumbled under Janet's cross-examination, revealing him as exactly what he was, a sleazy opportunist who'd thought he could manipulate a damaged marriage for profit. By the time court adjourned, Lena had lost her custody motion. Reed was facing potential criminal charges, and I had been awarded temporary full custody of Riley pending Lena's psychiatric evaluation. Outside the courthouse, Lena cornered me near my car. David, please, you have to understand, I never meant for things to go this far. Which part? The affair? The conspiracy? Or the attempt to pill me? All of it. I was scared, confused. Reed said he could help me, that you'd never have to know. But I did know. I knew everything, Lena. Every lie, every betrayal, every moment you spent mocking me to your lover while our daughter slept in the next room. She was sobbing now, mascara running down her cheeks like black tears. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Can't we work this out? For Riley? I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I'd loved enough to marry, to start a family with, to trust with my heart and my future. All I felt now was cold satisfaction. No, I said. We can't. I got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing alone in the courthouse parking lot. Strike two. Nina's call came 3 days after the custody hearing. You need to hear this, she said. Lena's planning something desperate. I was picking Riley up from preschool, watching her run toward me with a painting she'd made in art class. A house with 2 stick figures, Daddy and Riley, standing under a yellow sun. What kind of desperate? She thinks you've hidden assets somewhere. Documents, money, something she can use to get back at you. She wants me to help her search your place. When? Tomorrow night. She's convinced you keep important papers in the garage, locked away somewhere. She thinks if we can find evidence of hidden income or offshore accounts, she can reopen the custody case. I buckled Riley into her car seat, thinking fast. What did you tell her? That I think about it, David. She's not thinking clearly. The psychiatric evaluation has her rattled, and Reed's lawyer dropped him after the hearing. She's lashing out. Perfect. Tell her you'll do it. What? Tell her you'll help her break into the garage. Set it up for tomorrow night around 11. Make sure she brings Reed. David, that's breaking and entering. Felony charges. Only if they actually take something. And only if they get caught. Nina was quiet for a moment. What are you planning? Insurance. One more piece of evidence to make sure they can never come back at me or Riley. This is dangerous. If something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong. Trust me. That evening, I prepared the garage like a stage set. I placed a locked file cabinet in plain view, filled with fake financial documents that suggested hidden assets worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. I also prepared a manila envelope labeled Insurance, Confidential, containing fabricated correspondence with offshore banks. Then I set up cameras in every corner and tested the audio recording equipment 3 times. At 10:45 p.m. the next night, I watched from my apartment window as Lena's car pulled into the driveway. She got out nervously, looking around like she expected police to emerge from the bushes. Reed emerged from the passenger seat, carrying what looked like lock-picking tools. Nina met them at the garage door, wearing dark clothes and a guilty expression that was probably only half-acting. "Are you sure about this?" Nina asked loudly enough for my microphones to catch. "We need to know what he's hiding," Lena replied. "If David has been concealing assets during the divorce, I have a right to know. This feels wrong." "What feels wrong is him destroying my life while pretending to be the sufferer," Reed said. "He's got money hidden somewhere. Rich guys always do." They forced the door, not difficult since I'd left it deliberately easy to break. I watched on my monitors as they entered with flashlights, scanning the space like burglars. "There," Lena said, pointing at the file cabinet. "That's new. He never had a locked cabinet before." Reed went to work on the lock while Nina played lookout. It took him less than 5 minutes to get it open. "Jesus Christ," he breathed, pulling out the fake documents. "Look at this. Cayman Islands account, Swiss bank deposit records. This son of a witch has been hiding millions." "Are you serious?" Lena snatched the papers from his hands, scanning them by flashlight. "These fool. While I was working 60-hour weeks, he was stashing money overseas. This changes everything," Reed said. "Your lawyer can reopen the divorce settlement, probably get criminal charges filed for asset concealment." They spent another 20 minutes photographing documents and searching for more evidence. Nina played her role perfectly, expressing shock and outrage at my supposed deception while documenting everything on her phone. Finally, they prepared to leave, Reed stuffing some of the fake documents into his jacket. "We should put everything back," Nina said. "If he realizes we were here, let him realize it," Lena said. "I'm done being afraid of David Cross. Besides," Reed added, "by the time he figures out what we took, it'll be too late." "Your sister's going to own his heir." They left laughing, convinced they'd just discovered the evidence that would destroy me in court. I waited until their car disappeared down the street, then called Janet Reese. "I need you to file a police report," I said. "Breaking and entering, theft of documents, conspiracy." "What documents did they actually take?" "Nothing real, but they don't know that. And I have video of them admitting they broke in to steal evidence for a court case." "David, you set them up. I gave them the opportunity to make a choice. They chose to commit felonies." Janet was quiet for a moment. "You're a scary man when you're angry." "No," I said, watching my daughter sleep peacefully in the next room. "I'm a thorough man when my family's threatened." The police arrested Lena and Reed at 6 a.m. the next morning. I watched from my kitchen window as 2 patrol cars pulled into the driveway, their red and blue lights painting the early dawn in garish colors. Detective Sarah Chen, a friend from my Army days who now worked white-collar crime, led the arrest team. Lena answered the door in her bathrobe, hair disheveled from sleep. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could see her face change from confusion to shock to terror as Chen explained why they were there. Reed tried to run. He bolted from the back door as officers approached the front, sprinting across the yard in his underwear like a man possessed. He made it maybe 50 yards before a K-9 unit brought him down in the neighbor's flower bed. By 7 a.m., both of them were in custody, charged with breaking and entering, theft, and conspiracy. The documents they'd stolen were evidence of their intent to commit fraud, even though the financial information was fabricated. My phone rang as the police cars pulled away. "David!" Lena's voice was small, frightened. She was using her one phone call from jail. "I'm here. They say we stole documents from your garage, but that's impossible." Those papers showed you were hiding money from me. Why would you report theft of evidence that makes you look guilty? I let the silence stretch out, savoring the moment. Because the documents are fake, Lena. Every account number, every bank statement, every piece of evidence you thought you'd found. I created all of it. The intake of breath on the other end was sharp enough to cut glass. But why would you? To catch you in the act. To get you on video committing felonies while bragging about destroying my life. To prove to any judge who'll listen that you and Reed are criminals willing to break into my home and steal whatever you think might hurt me. You son of a witch. Actually, that would be you. The mother of my child, conspiring with her lover to frame me for mental illness and steal my business. My mother, by contrast, was a saint. David, please, I can explain. You don't need to explain anything. I heard it all already. Every plan, every scheme, every moment you spent mocking me while plotting to destroy my life. I've been recording you for months, Lena. Every phone call, every meeting with Reed, every moment you thought you were safe. The silence stretched so long, I wondered if she'd hung up. I'm pregnant, she whispered finally. With your baby. I closed my eyes, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Even now, even from jail, she was trying to manipulate me. When? About 6 weeks. I found out right before everything fell apart. Whose baby is it really, Lena? Mine or Reed's? Because according to my surveillance footage, you've been screwing him for at least 8 months. It's yours. I know it is. The timing means nothing. DNA will tell us everything we need to know. David, if I'm carrying your child, then I'll love that child completely, and I'll make sure he or she never grows up thinking it's acceptable to lie, cheat, steal, and betray the people who trust you. Please. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. For the baby. For Riley. I thought about Riley sleeping peacefully upstairs while her mother was arrested for trying to destroy her father's life. I thought about the child Lena might be carrying, and whether I could raise 2 kids alone while their mother served time in prison. No, I said finally. We can't fix this. You made your choices, Lena. Now live with them. I hung up before she could respond. Reed's business collapsed within a week. The IRS audit I'd triggered through anonymous tips revealed massive tax evasion and client fraud spanning 3 years. His Pinnacle Financial had been operating essentially as a Ponzi scheme, using new investor money to pay returns to earlier clients while Reed skimmed profits for his lifestyle. The federal charges made his local breaking and entering case look like a parking ticket. I sat in Halloran's office, watching news coverage of federal agents carrying boxes out of Reed's glass tower. My old friend leaned back in his chair, grinning like a man who just watched his favorite team win the Super Bowl. You know what the beautiful part is? Halloran said. We didn't even have to fabricate anything. The fool really was running a scam. We just pointed the feds in the right direction. How long will he get federal financial fraud with the amount of money involved? He's looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. Maybe 30 if they can prove he was laundering money for other clients. I felt a satisfaction so deep it was almost spiritual. Reed had targeted my family thinking I was weak, vulnerable, an easy mark for his schemes. Instead, he triggered an investigation that would destroy his entire criminal enterprise. What about Lena? Different story. Breaking and entering, conspiracy, the sedating incident. She's looking at maybe 2 to 5 years if she takes a plea deal. Could be more if she goes to trial and loses. And the baby? Halloran's expression softened slightly. That complicates things. Courts don't like sending pregnant women to prison. She might get house arrest until after the birth, then serve her sentence. DNA test? Already ordered. Results should be back next week. I nodded, staring out the window at the city where I'd built my life, my business, my family. Everything Lena and Reed had tried to destroy was still standing. Everything they built their plans on had crumbled to dust. You okay? Halloran asked. You've been pretty quiet through all this. Just thinking about what comes next. What do you want to come next? I considered the question. 6 months ago, I'd been a husband and father living what I thought was a stable, predictable life. I trusted my wife, believed in our marriage, assumed we wanted the same things for our family. Now, I knew better. I want Riley to grow up safe and loved, I said finally. I want my business to succeed. I want to never again be naive enough to trust someone who's actively planning to destroy me. That's not much of a life philosophy. It's a survival philosophy, and survival comes first. Halloran studied me for a long moment. You know, David, you've got a real talent for this kind of thing. Strategic thinking, long-term planning, staying calm under pressure. Ever think about changing careers? Not really. I could use someone like you. Private investigation, corporate security, asset recovery. The pay's better than electronics consulting, and the work would suit your particular skill set. I thought about it. There was something appealing about helping other people who'd been betrayed, manipulated, or victimized by those they trusted most. Something satisfying about using my abilities to level playing fields that had been tilted by lies and deception. Let me think about it. Take your time, but remember, you're good at this, David. Better than good. Some people spend their whole lives never knowing what they're truly capable of. That evening, I picked Riley up from her grandmother's house. Nina was watching her while I dealt with the legal proceedings. She ran to me with her usual enthusiasm, wrapping her small arms around my legs like she never wanted to let go. "Daddy, look what I made." She showed me a drawing of our family, Daddy, Riley, and Aunt Nina standing in front of a house. No mommy in the picture. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Should we put it on the refrigerator?" "Yes, and Daddy? Aunt Nina says Mommy went away for a while." I knelt down to her level, looking into eyes that were exactly like mine. "That's right. Mommy made some bad choices and now she has to stay somewhere else until she learns to make better ones. Like time out? Like time out for grown-ups. Will she come back?" I thought about how to answer that. Lena would eventually be released from prison, assuming she was convicted. She'd probably have visitation rights with Riley, supervised at first. The baby, if it was mine, would complicate everything. But Riley would never again live in a house where her mother was plotting to destroy her father. Never again go to sleep while adults in the next room planned betrayals and violence. Never again be used as a pawn in someone else's game. I don't know, sweetheart, but you'll always have me and Aunt Nina and everyone who loves you. That's never going to change. Promise? Promise. She hugged me tight, and I closed my eyes, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and feeling her small heart beating against my chest. This was what mattered. This was what I'd fought for. Everything else was just noise. I arranged to see Lena one last time before her sentencing. The county jail's visiting room was exactly what you'd expect. Gray concrete walls, fluorescent lighting, the smell of industrial disinfectant trying to mask human desperation. I sat at a metal table, waiting, while other inmates met with lawyers, family members, and friends who still believed in them. Lena entered wearing an orange jumpsuit that made her skin look sallow and drawn. She'd lost weight, and her usually perfect hair hung limp around her shoulders. Prison wasn't kind to women who were used to luxury. She sat across from me without speaking, her green eyes studying my face like she was looking for some crack in my composure. "You look good," she said finally. "Rested. I'm sleeping better lately." "I bet you are." Her voice carried a bitterness I'd never heard before. "Got everything you wanted, didn't you? The house, Riley, my reputation destroyed. I got justice. There's a difference." "Justice?" She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You destroyed my life over a stupid affair. Men cheat all the time, David. It doesn't usually end with federal prison." "You didn't just cheat, Lena. You conspired to steal my business, frame me for mental illness, and take my daughter away from me. The affair was just the appetizer. I was scared. You're not exactly easy to live with, David. All that military intensity, the way you watch everything, analyze everything. I felt like I was married to a spy. Maybe you should have divorced me instead of trying to destroy me. I tried the normal way first. But your lawyer was better than mine, and you had all those connections from the Army. I needed an edge. So you found Reed. Reed found me. He said he could help, that he'd handled cases like this before. Men who used their military training to intimidate their wives, hide assets, manipulate custody proceedings. I studied her face, looking for signs that she believed her own revisionist history. And it never occurred to you that a man willing to help you frame your husband might not be the most trustworthy person to build a relationship with? Reed loved me. Reed was using you. Just like he used his other clients, the ones whose money he stole to fund his lifestyle. You were another mark, Lena. Another woman with assets he could access through manipulation and lies. Something flickered in her eyes. Doubt, maybe, or the first recognition of how completely she'd been played. "The baby is yours," she said suddenly. "The DNA test proved it." "I know. So what happens now? I'm going to prison for 3 years minimum." "Are you going to let me see my children when I get out?" I'd been dreading this conversation for weeks, weighing the welfare of my children against my own desire for revenge. Riley would grow up with questions about her mother. The new baby would need to know where he came from. But they'd also need to be protected from someone who'd proven she was willing to destroy innocent people to get what she wanted. "Supervised visitation," I said finally. "Once a week, 2 hours with a court monitor present, no overnight stays, no time alone with either child until you've completed psychological counseling and proven you're not a threat to their well-being. That's not enough. They're my children, too. You should have thought about that before you tried to frame me for mental illness and steal my business." "David, please. I made mistakes, but I'm still their mother." "Riley loves me." "Riley loves the woman she thought you were. The woman who read her bedtime stories and made her breakfast. Not the woman who was planning to destroy her father while she slept in the next room." Lena's composure finally cracked. Tears ran down her face, carving tracks through makeup she'd probably applied in the hope of looking sympathetic. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry for all of it. The affair, the conspiracy, everything Reed and I planned. I was angry and scared, and I made terrible choices. I know you're sorry. You're sorry you got caught. That's not fair." "Fair?" I leaned forward, lowering my voice so the guards couldn't hear. "You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been divorcing me honestly and splitting our assets according to law. Fair would have been putting Riley's welfare ahead of your own desires. Fair would have been treating the father of your children with basic human decency instead of conspiring to destroy his life. I never wanted to hurt Riley, but you were willing to risk it. You were willing to take her father away from her, to raise her in a home built on lies and stolen money, to teach her that betrayal and manipulation are acceptable ways to get what you want." I stood up, our time almost finished. "You want to know what fair would be, Lena? Fair would be you never seeing either of your children again. Fair would be them growing up believing their mother was dead instead of knowing she chose a con man over their family. David, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to follow the law, honor the court's decisions, and give you the opportunity to prove you can be a decent mother to the children you nearly destroyed. That's not justice, Lena. That's mercy." I walked toward the exit without looking back. "David," she called after me. "David, wait." I kept walking. Outside the jail, I sat in my car for several minutes, letting the afternoon sun warm my face while I processed what I'd seen. The woman I'd married was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. Someone broken by her own choices and the consequences that followed. I felt no satisfaction in her suffering, no joy in her tears. I felt nothing at all. Maybe that was its own kind of victory. 6 months later, I held my son for the first time. Michael David Cross weighed 7 pounds, 2 ounces, and had my dark hair and Lena's green eyes. The nurse placed him in my arms while Lena recovered from the cesarean section, still groggy from anesthesia and the reality of giving birth while serving a federal prison sentence. "He's beautiful," Nina said, standing beside me in the hospital room. She'd been my constant support through the pregnancy, helping with Riley, attending doctor's appointments, and serving as my advocate when the legal system became too complicated to navigate alone. "He looks like Riley did as a baby. Same stubborn chin." I studied my son's face, this innocent child who'd been conceived during the worst period of my marriage and born into the wreckage of his parents' war. He had no idea that his mother was a federal prisoner, that his father had systematically destroyed the lives of everyone who'd threatened his family, that his very existence was evidence of betrayal and manipulation. All he knew was warmth, comfort, and the sound of a voice promising to protect him. "What are you thinking?" Nina asked. "That he deserves better than the circumstances of his birth. He's got you. That's better than most kids get." Lena stirred on the hospital bed, her eyes focusing slowly on the scene across the room. "David, is that—" "Your son," I said, not moving from where I stood. "Michael, can I hold him?" I looked at the prison guard stationed by the door, then back at Lena, She was handcuffed to the bed rail, barely conscious from surgery, no threat to anyone. But she was also a woman who'd tried to destroy my life and steal my business. Still, she was his mother. I carried Michael to her bedside and carefully placed him in her arms, making sure the handcuffs didn't interfere. Lena looked down at our son with an expression I hadn't seen from her in years. Genuine, uncomplicated love. "He's perfect," she whispered. "David, he's absolutely perfect." "Yes, he is. I'm going to be a good mother to him. I know I made mistakes with Riley, with everything, but I'm going to do better. I'm going to—" "Lena," I interrupted her gently. "You don't get to make promises anymore. You get to make choices one day at a time and prove through your actions whether you're capable of being the mother these children deserve." She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "I want to try." "Then try. But understand that your wants don't determine what happens to our children. Their welfare does." The guard announced that visiting time was over. I took Michael back from Lena's arms, ignoring her soft protests, and prepared to leave. "David," she called as I reached the door. "Thank you for bringing him to see me, for not shutting me out completely." I turned back one last time. "I didn't do it for you, Lena. I did it for him. Every child deserves to know where they came from, even if they choose a different path." Outside the hospital, I strapped Michael into the car seat I'd installed that morning. Riley was waiting at home with Nina, excited to meet her baby brother and help take care of him. My daughter had adapted to our new life with remarkable resilience. She rarely asked about her mother anymore, accepting Nina's explanations that mommy was learning to make better choices with the pragmatic wisdom of a 4-year-old. The nightmares had stopped. She slept through the night, played with her friends, laughed at silly jokes. She was becoming herself again, free from the tension and uncertainty that had defined our house during the worst months of the divorce. I drove home through streets that looked different now, familiar but somehow brighter. Spring had arrived early in Virginia, painting the world in fresh greens and soft pastels, new beginnings everywhere I looked. At home, Riley met us at the door, bouncing with excitement. "Is that him? Is that my baby brother?" "This is Michael," I said, kneeling down so she could see him clearly. "He's very small and very tired, so we have to be gentle. He's so little. Can I hold him after dinner? Right now he needs to sleep." I settled Michael in the crib I'd set up in my bedroom, watching him sleep with the kind of contentment I thought was lost forever. Nina appeared in the doorway, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Like a father of 2. "That's not what I meant." I accepted the coffee and considered her question. How did I feel? Satisfied that justice had been served? Sad that my children would grow up in a broken family? Angry that Lena's choices had created this situation? "I feel responsible," I said, finally, "for making sure they never have to pay for their parents' mistakes." "And Lena? How do you feel about her?" I thought about the woman I'd seen in the hospital bed, holding our son with genuine love while handcuffed to the rail. She was the mother of my children, the woman I'd once loved enough to marry, the person who'd betrayed me more completely than I'd thought possible. "I feel nothing," I said, "and that's exactly how I want it." Nina nodded. "That's probably healthy. It's honest. Same thing in your case." 2 years later, I stood in my new office, looking out at the Potomac River while my secretary scheduled appointments with clients who needed someone capable of finding the truth. In situations where everyone was lying, cross-security consulting had grown beyond my expectations. Corporate espionage cases, asset recovery for divorce attorneys, background investigations for companies that couldn't afford to hire the wrong people. Halloran had been right. I had a talent for this work, and it paid considerably better than electronics repair. More importantly, it gave me purpose. Every case was another chance to help someone who'd been betrayed, manipulated, or victimized by people they'd trusted. Every successful investigation was proof that truth could prevail over deception if you were willing to work hard enough to find it. My phone rang, Nina's number. "David, you need to get to the school. There's been an incident with Riley." I was in my car before she finished the sentence, racing through downtown traffic with the kind of focused urgency I'd learned in combat zones. My daughter was the center of my world now. Everything else was secondary. I found Riley in the principal's office, sitting in a chair that was too big for her 6-year-old frame. Her eyes were red from crying, but her jaw was set with stubborn determination that reminded me of myself. "What happened?" I asked the principal, Mrs. Chen. "Riley got into a fight with another student. She kicked him pretty hard, gave him a leaking nose." I knelt down beside my daughter's chair. "Riley, what happened?" "Tommy said my mommy was in jail because she's a bad person. He said that makes me bad too." My heart clenched. "What did you do?" "I told him that wasn't true. That mommy made bad choices, but she's not a bad person, and I'm not bad either. But he kept saying it, so I kick him." "Violence isn't the answer, sweetheart." "I know. But I got really mad, and I couldn't think of what else to do." Mrs. Chen cleared her throat diplomatically. "Mr. Cross, we understand Riley's been through a difficult time. But we can't tolerate physical violence, regardless of the provocation. I understand. What's the punishment? Suspension for the rest of the week. And we'd like to arrange some counseling sessions to help Riley develop better conflict resolution skills." I nodded, then looked at my daughter. "Riley, do you understand why kicking Tommy was wrong? Because it hurt him. And because there were better ways to handle it." "That's right. What could you have done instead? Told the teacher, or walked away, or used words to explain why he was wrong." "Good. Are you sorry you kick him?" She considered this with the seriousness of a child who'd learned that words had consequences. "I'm sorry I hurt him, but I'm not sorry I stood up for our family." Despite the circumstances, I felt a surge of pride. Riley was learning to defend herself and the people she loved, even if her methods needed refinement. "We'll work on better ways to stand up for our family," I said. "Ways that don't involve punching people." "Okay, Daddy." That evening, after Riley was asleep, I called Lena at the federal facility where she was serving her sentence. We'd established a routine of weekly phone calls so she could maintain some connection with the children. "I heard about the fight," she said. "Is Riley okay?" "She's fine, suspended for a week, but she'll survive." "David, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. If I hadn't—" "Lena, stop. Riley's going to face questions about her family for years. Kids can be cruel and adults can be worse. She needs to learn how to handle it, not hide from it. What do I tell her when she asks about me?" "The truth. Age appropriate, but honest. You made bad choices, and you're paying the consequences. When you get out, you'll have to prove you've learned from your mistakes." A long pause. "Do you think I have? Learned from them?" I considered the question. Through our phone calls and supervised visits, I'd watched Lena change over the past 2 years. Prison had stripped away her entitlement and forced her to confront the reality of her choices. She'd completed obsession counseling despite never having a substance misuse problem, taken parenting classes, earned her GED equivalency even though she'd already had a college degree. Maybe she was genuinely trying to become a better person. Maybe she was just going through the motions to improve her chances at early release. "I think you're trying," I said finally. "Whether that's enough remains to be seen. I want to be the mother they deserve." "Then be that person. But understand that wanting it isn't enough. You have to prove it every day for the rest of their lives." "I will. I promise." I hung up without responding to her promise. Lena's promises had lost their meaning long ago. Later that night, I checked on both children. Michael was sleeping peacefully in his crib, a 2-year-old bundle of energy who looked exactly like I had at that age. Riley was curled up with her stuffed elephant, her face peaceful in sleep. They were healthy, happy, safe. They lived in a house free from lies, manipulation, and betrayal. They had a father who would die before letting anyone hurt them, and an aunt who loved them unconditionally. It wasn't the family I'd planned to build when I married Lena 7 years ago, but it was a good family, an honest family, a family built on truth instead of convenient deceptions. I walked out to the garage apartment where this had all begun, looking up at the windows of the main house where my children slept. The baby monitor on my belt was silent. No strange noises, no betrayals echoing through the night. Just peace. I thought about Reed Mathers, now serving 15 years in federal prison for financial fraud. About Lena, learning to live with the consequences of her choices. About the man I'd been before I discovered their conspiracy, naive enough to trust without verification. That man was gone, replaced by someone harder, more cautious, more capable of protecting the people who mattered most. The transformation had cost me my marriage, my faith in love, my ability to trust without reservation, but it had saved my children. In the end, that was the only calculation that mattered. I walked back to the house, locked the doors, and set the security system. Tomorrow, I would take Riley to school and explain to her teachers why her suspension was actually a learning opportunity. I would drop Michael off at daycare and go to work helping other people navigate their own betrayals and deceptions. I would build a business and a reputation based on finding truth in situations where everyone was lying. But tonight, I would sleep peacefully in a house where the only sounds were the innocent breathing of children who trusted me to keep them safe. Some things you don't forgive. You just survive them better. The end.